Yeah, my name is Mickey, and I don't know. People ask me all the time how I started rapping. I don't know actually, but I know around middle school and high school time, I was totally into hip hop, and my favorite artists were Eminem and Jay-Z. And Eminem's an angry rapper, but I used to listen to all of his stuff, and then I'd try to recite his lyrics and memorize them. And I love the act of rapping. Something about the words coming off your tongue, and something about you using cadences and rhythm. And so I fell in love with hip hop and rap. And so listening to Eminem, I was very influenced by his style of music. And he's very angry, made a bunch of diss songs. So my earliest memories of rapping, I would make songs, like angry songs that people, like dissing people. I really didn't like mosquitoes, it's real embarrassing, but I made like a hate song towards mosquitoes. Like that's how I started, really funny. But as time progressed, as my faith and my relationship and my intimacy with God started to grow deeper, I found that my music naturally started to change. But I would say at the start of it, it was very superficial. I just loved the feeling of doing hip hop and rap, and the content was very dark. It was a very dark time. Yeah. You know, all the hip hop heads are probably going to kill me for this, but I actually haven't listened to a lot of hip hop in the last 2 years. For some reason, my tastes, I've just loved folk music, like music, acoustic songs, and a bunch of indie artists. For some reason, that's been my taste in the last 2 years. But early on, a lot of influences were Eminem, Jay-Z, Lupe Fiasco, a lot of these mainstream hip-hop artists that I loved. But as of late, it's weird. I haven't listened to much hip-hop. But in the last month or so, you know, with Lecrae's album coming out, and I feel like Christian hip-hop is in a different place than it was 2-3 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. And the level of excellence has really stepped up a notch. And so listening to Christian hip-hop now, it's like, it's amazing. I really could tell that there's a standard of excellence that's been raised for the Christian hip-hop artist. Well, I love the Amp guys. I love Jahan. I love Sam Ock and Chung, CL. And I've rapped with Go before as well. And MC Jin, always looked up to him. Like when I was young, he was one of the ones that I saw on TV, on BET Freestyle Fridays. And I'd be like, I want to be just like him, right? And so when I heard that Good Fruit was getting all of these artists together, NAK, I just heard him recently, amazing stuff. When I heard that all these artists were going to come together for this tour, I was like, I can't miss out on that. And so I love how naturally, it was birthed so naturally because of my relationships with the Amp guys and with Good Fruit. They just asked me to come, and I said, I can't pass this up. It's an opportunity of a lifetime to rap with my favorite Asian American hip-hop artists. I think my testimony can be divided into 3 defining moments. The first was in 2nd grade. When I was 7 years old, I went to a Christian elementary school. And one day, you know, I learned a lot about who Jesus was. I knew a lot about Christianity, but I didn't really know Jesus. And I remember one day during recess, my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Everett, took me aside during recess, asked if I could help clean the classroom. And me being the good student I was like, yeah, I'll help you clean the classroom. And I remember she sat me down and she just started to share about this man Jesus who just died for my sins, who paid the price on my behalf so that I could be one with the Father. And I remember something about that moment, Spirit was on that moment where I made a decision, I accept Jesus Christ into my heart. The second defining moment was in youth group. That's the first time I tasted the Holy Spirit. And I remember I was at a youth camp, and at that time I was in a very dark, depressing period. But I remember something happened during altar call where I just felt the love of the Father. And it's like a feeling you can't describe or explain, but I felt it overcome me. And I found myself, I never cry, but I started crying and crying for 3 hours straight. I was like, where's all this fluids coming from? Like I didn't know I drank so much water, but I just kept crying. I fell to the floor on my knees, and that's when I experienced the touch of the Holy Spirit. But I feel like the most important defining moment for me was in college. It was my junior year. And I was in a very dark period of my life. I just broke up with my first girlfriend. I was going through a really dark, depressing time. I remember one day I was in my room and I was on my knees and I said, God, if you're real, like I need to know you're here for me. And I remember in that moment on my knees in the floor, it felt like a movie scene because I felt, for the first time in my life, I felt physical arms wrap around my body, like he was hugging me from behind. And this is the first time I heard the audible voice of God. I heard a whisper in my ear. He said, Mickey, you're my beloved son, whom I love. I'm well pleased with you. like even in your darkest moment, I want you to know I don't love you any less. I'm well pleased with you. And I feel like that moment, meeting God the Father for the first time, it just broke off all insecurity, all depression, and I was able to walk in a new level of freedom and love for Jesus. And so those are the 3 defining moments of my faith, and I feel like it brought me to where I'm at now. I think our generation knows a lot about Jesus. They know a lot about God, but they don't know God. And I think there's a big difference. You know, I could say I know a lot about this person. I know what he likes or she likes. I know what kind of food she likes. I know what she doesn't like. But I think it's another thing to sit with someone and really know them. Like we have a relationship. And I feel like that's the great divide in Christianity today is a lot of people know a lot about God, but they don't know him. Like they don't walk with him intimately. And I feel like a big reason for that is, I'm all about knowing God the Father. And I think in the Asian American community, there's a great divide between the generation of fathers and sons and daughters. You know, a lot of my generation, we can't connect relationally to our parents. Maybe it's just the style of relationships they had growing up and the language barrier. But I feel like that's such a crucial aspect of knowing God, is knowing God as Father. Like that's where I feel like the love and the intimacy flow from. Asian Americans are crazy. Like, I don't know any other ethnicity or people group that's willing to go into the darkest regions of the world, sacrifice everything that my grandpa, he sold all his possessions, sold his car, moved the entire family to America and planted a church. And I feel like there's something about Asian Americans where we're just ready to go all out for Jesus. Like once Jesus touches your heart, it's like, I'll do anything, you know, I'll sacrifice it all. I'll give it all. I'll go to Iraq. I'll go wherever the gospel's taking me. And I feel like our calling is to spearhead a movement of radical, on fire, relentless believers, just nothing holding us back. And I feel like that's what we bring. That's why Asians love to wake up for morning prayer at 5 a.m. in the morning. It's like, I'm giving up everything for you. I'm giving up my life for the gospel. And so I think that's something really powerful. It's a strength of the Asian American church and the Asian church in general. Yeah, I think the issue of modern day slavery is something that stirs my heart a lot. And back in 2006, the issue was relatively not as widespread and known as it is now. I remember one of my pastors, he came to me and said, Mickey, I want you to just Google and research about modern day slavery, specifically human sex trafficking. And I remember I looked it up and I read all these stories about these women, these young girls who had been sold into sexual slavery, reading their stories, the heartbreaking, heart-wrenching stories that they had to go through. And I remember thinking, man, like if there's one call of our generation, it's to end modern day slavery. It's to end this injustice. And I remember that year I wrote a song. It's called Not For Sale. It's my favorite song. It's actually, the Lord told me, whenever I have a chance, wherever you perform, I want you to perform that song. Because this is one of the mantles of your life. It's to see modern day slavery end in your generation. And so I feel like that's kind of how my heart started burning for the topic of social injustice, particularly modern day slavery. And it's been amazing since, you know, the song Not For Sale allowed me to work with such amazing ministries like Not For Sale, Sold Out, even Exodus Cry and International House of Prayer. There's just it just opened so many doors for me to partner with these people who are actually making change on every single level, from the ground floor where they're going and ministering to these women who are enslaved, to people who are ministering to pimps, to people who are in legislation and law, who are really fighting to get this injustice completely rid of. And so it's an exciting journey, and I believe with all my heart that our generation, we're going to see the end of modern day slavery, particularly human sex trafficking. Yeah. You know, I know a lot of Asian Americans, they struggle, especially when their children want to go into like the arts or entertainment or something like that. I didn't experience any of that from my family, actually, surprisingly. And right now, I'm an associate pastor at a church in Emeryville called Living Hope Christian Center, and I oversee missions, media, the arts, creativity, worship, all that stuff, all the stuff that I love. And at the same time, I'm doing music as well. And you know, those are the two things like every Korean American parent is afraid their children are going to go into. Number one, either the ministry, they're going to be like, you're going to be broke, you're going to be poor, or entertainment. But it's interesting because my parents 100% of the way have been completely supportive, and they trust me. And so it's been a really cool journey that they're able to be so supportive. They've funded me many times when I've fallen short, and they're excited for my calling into ministry and my calling into music. But I do understand that there is this trend, especially in the Asian American community, where if you're not a doctor or a lawyer or something that's making you a lot of money, a lot of times parents are resisting. But you know what? I've heard so many stories of children who have just pursued their heart's desire and their dreams, and they still honored their parents at the same time. And in a matter of time, their parents, they caught on to the vision of what their children are doing, and they just came into agreement with it. And so I believe there's hope for this generation. I believe there is. What does it mean to be fearless? Well, I was thinking a lot about it because the guys asked me to say something on video about what it means to be fearless, and I thought about it. And I think for me, you know, we did a cipher, all of us rappers together, and the first line of the cipher for my verse is, it's not about mastering fears, it's knowing that my master is here. Fear is gone when my daddy appears. And I think fearlessness is not so much about not having fear or mastering your fears or conquering your fears. I think fearlessness is knowing that God is here, He's present with you. And it's like, I remember growing up, you know, I was afraid of thunderstorms. And every time it would start raining and thundering and lightning would pop up, I'd be so scared. But there was something that happens when my dad was next to me, or he was holding me, or he was telling me it's going to be all right. And I think the key to living a fearless life is living in the continual awareness of the presence of God in your life. That's how you can really be fearless. And so I think, you know, perfect love casts out all fear. Perfect love is God. And so if you're aware of His presence in your life, you can really live fearlessly. That's what I feel like it means to be fearless. Well, if I had to say anything else, I'd say I love the vision of your ministry. I believe there's a generation that's arising that's more than just about doing church and playing it safe, but people, sons and daughters, who are willing to step out into the darkest places of the world and really tap into the creativity that God's placed inside of them for the purpose of advancing the gospel. And I love it because it doesn't all look like Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Some of it just comes with being excellent at what you're doing. And it's like when the world sees that excellence, when the world sees true creativity, one of my favorite pastors says, true beauty will always lead back to God. And so I believe there's a generation of creative, excellent people that are just doing what they love doing and doing it well, and where people are going to look at their lives and just somehow see God, be led back to God. And I believe this is that time. This is that generation. And so it's very exciting. Very exciting what you guys are doing, what this whole tour is about. And I'm excited to be a part of it as well.